Hello, dear learners. I welcome you in the last lecture of this week. In this particular lecture, we'll be looking into the role of a teacher in disaster management. So, by the end of the 30 minutes, you will be able to explain the concept of disaster management and the role of teachers during disasters, discuss the impact of disasters on school, on students, and the education system. And lastly, we'll be able to demonstrate disaster preparedness skills that are required for evacuation procedures, first aid, and mock drill participation. So let's get started. Now, here's a quick review of what we had learned in these last 4 lectures, because in the last 4 topics, we only talked about disaster. Disaster meaning a sudden calamity, an event that seriously disrupts the functioning of a community or a society and which causes harm in 3 areas. Remember, I talked about the human loss, the economic losses, and of course, the third is the environmental losses. And disaster management, on the other hand, can be defined as the organization and management of resources and responsibility for dealing with all humanitarian aspect of emergencies, and especially in particular preparedness, response and recovery in order to lessen the impact of the disaster. Now, what is the impact of a natural disaster on education? First, let's have a look at that. Education is a human right. It is universal and it is inalienable. Everyone is born with this right. So education is especially important in enabling people to reach to their full potential and exercise their other rights. So this right does not disappear nor get suspended just because a disaster has occurred in any area or there is an emergency. Always remember that even if a disaster has occurred in an area, this is one sector that we want to keep it going. Because when education is interrupted or is limited, students, they drop out, and there's negative or permanent economic and social impact on the society, and there's impact on the students, their families, and their communities. So natural hazards are a part of the context of education planning. So school safety, educational continuity, it requires a dynamic, it's a continuous process which is initiated by the management involving workers, students, parents, and the local community. If you remember, during the COVID time, that was an emergency area. That was an emergency that was declared for 2 years, and those 2 years did not halt the education system. We kept the school going, right? Because we need that. Because once this sector is disrupted, it will cause havoc in the society, in the community. So even if there is a flood that has happened or earthquake that has happened, in the relief camps, we do see a separate tent is built up in order to teach the student and take the classes and keep the education going. Keep that cycle, keep the ball rolling. Don't let it stop. So when we talk about disaster, impact of disasters, we have to talk impact of disasters on schools as well, because it affects the school, the infrastructure of the school. But also remember that disaster reduction begins at school. That is the slogan. It highlights the importance of integrating disaster education with the basic education. So disaster preparedness promotes scientific thinking, responsible citizenship, environmental awareness, and sustainable development. So it also develops problem solving, analytical, and interpersonal skills in building up disaster resilient communities. So schools plays a vital role in creating awareness and preparedness among students and communities. It also strengthens community participation and supports long-term resilience and livelihood security. Disaster management in school. Now, disaster management or the school disaster management is a process of assessment, planning, physical protection, and responsible capacity, which basically is developed or designed to protect the student and staff from any kind of a physical harm. It is providing a safe haven for them, minimizing disruption and ensuring the continuity of education for all children. It's also developing and maintaining a culture which is known as a culture of safety. Now, training teachers for disaster management. Now, teachers, they play a very crucial, very vital role in disaster management. And after all, they are humans. They have the same emotions. So it's important for us that we first train the teachers. How are they going to deal with the situation? Special attention should be paid to select those teachers with outstanding experience in teaching lessons regarding disaster issues. Spending adequate preparation time and utilizing all available resources before a disaster occurs is of high importance. So teachers should be prepared to allocate a certain period of their routine work to be trained on disaster risk. Now this is becoming very necessary. It's a skill that we have to learn. So they should be trained in disaster awareness, what is risk reduction, and emergency procedures. Moreover, the training should be of the first aid also. What is the evacuation drills, the search and rescue, and the communication skills, all that will also come under the training procedure. Then teachers learn how to identify the hazard and prepare the school safety plans as well. Then capacity building programs also improve teachers' confidence and leadership during emergencies. So once they are trained, they know how to respond. They have the right set of skills. So that will boost up the confidence, and at times like these, they will adopt the leadership role. They will make informed decisions. So disaster management training helps teacher guide and protect students during crisis. Then there should be regular workshop, mock drills, and simulations which strengthens the preparedness skills as well. Then teacher also play a key role in spreading awareness among students, parents, and the community. Now, integration of disaster education in teacher training programs, it promotes resilience and safe culture in schools. So you see why it is so important for teachers. And can you imagine if, God forbid, there is a siren and there is an alert of an earthquake that is supposed to occur within 5 minutes. Students are in the schools. The parents have left the students under your supervision, under the supervision of a teacher. And teacher herself is so panicked by the news that she is the first one who rushes out of the class, leaving the children behind. She can't do that. You are responsible, a teacher is responsible for each and every student in her class. So this is an immense responsibility for the teacher, and she should understand that. Then of course the training methods, how can a teacher be trained? So of course we have method like group discussion. This is a very effective method. Through discussion, we can review different approaches and ideas and problems within a group, and it's an effective method for developing a number of different skills. Skills include logic, active listening, and formulation of argument, and the ability to listen and respect differing opinion as well. Then demonstration, it is based on observation, how people usually learn their special skills through observation. And also demonstration has different steps like preparedness, explanation, then demonstration, and then assessment and feedback and so on. Then conferences. This is also another very interactive training approach, where trainees actively participate by sharing their ideas, experience, and knowledge on a specific topic. And unlike a lecture, information is gathered through discussion and participation. You have expertise also who are present, they're also sharing ideas. The trainers act as a facilitators by guiding and by managing and controlling the discussion process. So effective conference requires proper planning of facilitators, resources, the facilities, the group organization, and the time schedule as well. Then comes excursions. For excursion, you can understand as a group visit to an institution or an organization in order to learn about its functioning, and normally which you call as an excursion. So during an excursion or a site visit, trainees will be provided with an opportunity to observe how the work is being done in real environment, in real situation, and to receive the first-hand information about its characteristic features. So you can visit in case there are camps being set up, for relief camps being set up, so teachers can go and visit those camps. They can see how those relief the workers are working, the medical personnel are working, the rehabilitation centers we can go in, the teachers can go and visit. So this can be in a form of excursions. So through the observation, they'll be able to understand how the whole process of work, how the whole process of disaster management is supposed to work. Then role playing. This is also accompanied by, which is by performing. So this method can be used in individual or in a form of a group teaching also. So during role play, trainees stage a real situation, right? They act out the certain roles, and thus they receive a theoretical knowledge and a practical experience as well. So role play is an active form of teaching, during which the trainee can be both mentally and physically active. So here some of the teachers can be some can be the victims, some can be the medical personnel, right? And some can be those victims which are not affected. Or so how are you supposed to help them, and how are you supposed to enact? They'll be enacting the whole thing, in which they will be participating in providing the first aid. How are you going to attend to the elderly population if they're present, and how are you going to communicate to them? All that will be trained in that role play. Then learning while doing. This is another very important practical method, during which trainees, they receive not just information, but the exact instruction necessary for the experiment or simulation. Now the goal is for the trainees to carry out actions that will develop their knowledge or skills. Now during the practical work, the teacher must use feedback intensively in order to ensure its effectiveness. So that's how the learning while doing can work effective, because once you start getting the feedback, you understand how much are you learning from it. So the exact instructions are very important. Now even in the images you see, the teachers, the trainees, they're also clad in those very same clothes like the medical personnel, right? Because they have to feel that situation. They have to feel, they have to be in that particular role and understand how they're supposed to carry out their action. Then only they can develop their knowledge and hone the skills that are required for disaster management. Now, role of a teacher in disaster management. The first role is in conducting mock drills. So a teacher, like I said, she or he plays a very important role in organizing and conducting mock drills especially for earthquake, for fire, and evacuation drills in schools. How are they supposed to occur? Now these activities help children understand what are the emergency procedures, emergency plans, and teach them how to respond it in a very calm and in a very safe manner during disaster. I know it is easy said than done, because at that time you're not facing a disaster. So mock drills are very easy. And I know it will be quite different when the real disaster is taking place. But still we are prepared with some kind of basic knowledge, some kind of understanding about the emergency procedures. And we have, as a teacher, we have to take it seriously. If you're not taking it seriously, so do you think your student's going to take it seriously? No way. If you're just laughing about it, making jokes, cracking jokes, and not following the rules, so that's how even the students won't do that. So this is something that we have to be very serious about. So regular drill, it improves preparedness, it reduces panic, and it develops confidence. So you have the confidence, you know exactly what to do when the time occurs. And even the students, they feel that confidence that if the real life emergency does occur, they know how to deal with that particular situation effectively. It also helps to identify if there is any weakness in the school safety plans as well. Because once you're doing the continuous drill work, you will be also identifying, okay, what are the safety, any weakness in the school safety program, or what is there any way in which we can improve the coordination among students, among teachers, and school authorities during emergencies. All that will come and through regular feedback. Every, you can say, drill work will be a learning, will be an improvement. Then early warning communication. This is another very important aspect in which teachers plays a very important role, that during disaster, how are you supposed to inform the students about the warning signs, about the safety instructions, and it should be very clear and in a very timely manner. Now, we also have different symbols in the form, we also have different emojis that are able to explain the different disasters, and sometimes these are the language, or these are the symbols that we have to use in order to communicate with students or to communicate with the wider public who might not be well versed with learning, right? So when you're communicating with the students about the early warning signs and the safety instructions, basically it also helps to maintain discipline, avoid any kind of confusion that is arising, and ensure that the students, they follow the safety procedure and all of them are on the same page. They understand what these symbols are communicating. And you can put up the symbols in the walls of the classroom, in the corridors, where there are safe zones where they can, move towards in case of emergency. Effective communication by teachers also strengthens preparedness and help protect students from any kind of potential risk as well. So the more you prepared yourself, the more you are protecting the children from any kind of risk. So teachers also ensure that accurate information reaches the students quickly, preventing the spread of fear, panic, and misinformation during emergencies. This is another very important thing, because fear is inevitable, you can say. It will happen because at the time of emergency, you will fear what's going to happen next, because there will be a lot of chaos, there will be a lot of screaming, some may be crying, some may be breaking down, they will be having meltdown and nervous breakdown. And amongst all that, especially for a teacher, how she's maintaining her calmness, her emotions as well, because even she has a family. So even she knows about this, about the emotional attachment, even this, and all the students are clinging towards the teachers because she's the only one present there in the room who can protect them. So how she is managing the fear, the panic, and also the misinformation, because the misinformation that is spread, she has to clarify that, and she has to be truthful regarding that, any information she's giving to the students. Now, the role during emergency situations. Now, teachers are responsible for maintaining calm and guiding the students towards safety. She herself should be very calm enough. Now, they should coordinate evacuation program, monitor students' movement, provide leadership in crisis situations. Now, she should identify which students can also be leaders in a group, and then she can also train them accordingly. And the ability to make quick decisions and informed decision, and how to manage students effectively, is essential for minimizing panic and ensuring safety during disaster. Teachers also cooperate with emergency responders and school authorities to manage the situation effectively and ensure proper care for affected students as well. And especially for small children, teachers and parents should make sure that in a disaster prone areas, the students, they know or they memorize the emergency phone numbers, the shortest route towards a hospital, the shortest route towards a police station. So in case of emergency, in case even if they're stranded, if they're separated out from the group, and so they know which location to move, the nearest. So they must be familiarized with the geographical layout of the school also, which is the way towards their home, towards the closest hospital and so on. Then ensuring student safety. So one of the primary responsibility of teachers during disaster is ensuring that each and every student is safe. Instead of you running away from the situation, you have to stay there till the end and make sure that each and every student is safe. And teachers help evacuate students to a safer location, maintain the attendance record, that how many students in my class, you maintain the record and ensure that no student is left behind. They also give special attention to younger children. You might have to carry them, or to differently able children also, how you are going, they're the students with special need. So you have to help them if they're in the wheelchair or if they are visually challenged. So how are you supposed to assist them? And by maintaining order and discipline during emergencies, teachers help reduce chaos and create a safer environment within the school. Now, first aid and basic emergency response. That's another thing that a teacher should be well versed with. What is the emergency response that can be given in case of immediate assistance to an injured person, injured student, or injured colleague of yours? So until the professional help is arriving, you should be equipped with that skill of providing CPR, wound care, handling minor injuries, which are extremely valuable during emergencies. So their preparedness can reduce the severity of injuries and help save life during disaster situation. Now, basic knowledge of emergency response also enable teachers to manage health-related emergencies effectively and support rescue efforts within the school premises. Now, psychological support for students. This is another vital role in which only a teacher, she can play an important role in that, by providing what you call as a psychological first aid to the students. So, disaster will lead to fear, to panic, to anxiety, to emotional meltdown, nervous breakdown, PTSD. So, a teacher plays a very supportive role by comforting the students and listening to their concern. Because it's not only during the disaster, it's also after the disaster when the students have returned back and the school is normally functioning. Now, the student might have lost some loved one. And how are they coping up with that? So a teacher should be very patient enough and provide a sense of safety and reassurance to the students. Through positive interaction and emotional support, a teacher can help students cope up with the stress, with their grief, and gradually recover from the psychological effects of a disaster. They also observe any kind of behavioral change in students and provide encouragement that promotes emotional healing and resilience. Here, of course, the role of parent also becomes important. We have to take the parents in the loop also. If you're dealing with the children with any kind of a behavioral change, you have to inform the parents also. And parents and teachers, and another important thing is maintaining routine, maintaining proper diet, proper sleep, and proper routine for the students. Then only that will help them to cope up with this kind of a distress that they're facing. Because it's not only the physical health, but mental health should also be taken care of. The diet, the sleeping pattern, these often also affect your mood, and this often affects your emotional health as well. Integrating disaster education into the curriculum. So the teacher can promote disaster preparedness if she herself formulate the syllabi or the curriculum by incorporating the topics of disaster management in everyday classroom teaching. It could be in the form of demonstration, in the form of projects, discussion, practical activities. Students learn more about disaster risk, safety measures, and emergency response strategies. So integrating disaster education into the curriculum will help students develop awareness, preparedness, and resilience among students from an early age. So it also encourages students to become responsible citizens who can contribute effectively to disaster risk reductions in their communities. But there are some challenges faced by teachers in disaster management. So let's have a look at it. First challenge is lack of proper training. Many teachers do not receive any specialized training regarding disaster preparedness. And as a result, they do lack the confidence and they no longer know the effective method of handling any kind of emergency crisis. Then limited knowledge of first aid and rescue techniques. If you have limited knowledge of first aid like CPR, what are the rescue methods needed to handle injuries before a professional help arrives, it becomes difficult. You feel helpless because you don't know that particular set of skill. Sometimes inadequate school infrastructure and safety equipment also prove a big hindrance because there are poor building condition, lack of emergency, there's no emergency exit, absence of any safety tools, and that make disaster management very difficult in schools like these. Then shortage of financial and educational resources. Because if you have limited funds, which often prevents the schools from organizing any kind of a training program. They can't organize mock drills, they can't have invited lectures, they can't have awareness activities. So as a result, because of shortage of funds, these things will also suffer. Then absence of proper emergency plans and communication systems. So some schools even don't have clear evacuation plans. They don't have proper auditorium or room in which they have to move during the case of emergency, and there are no method of communication also and in case of emergency. So that also proves a big hindrance. Then difficulty in maintaining large number of students. This is something that we all are facing, the teacher-student ratio. If one teacher is handling 50 to 60 or sometimes 80 students, how is it possible for her to look into each and every student of hers and make sure that all the students are safe? So handling and evacuating many students safely and especially during a panic situation, a chaotic situation can become very highly challenging. And emotional and psychological stresses. So if the teacher themselves experience stress and anxiety while protecting students, because they don't know how to deal with their own emotions, so it will be so difficult for them to deal other emotions as well. So lack of coordination with authorities, more poor coordination with disaster response agencies and local authorities can delay effective emergency response. Then limited administrative and institutional support. Sometimes the administration also do not support the teachers for the training process or for the mock drills to occur in the schools. And as such, this also creates a big barrier. Or there's insufficient time for mock drills and awareness the programs because teachers are heavily loaded with academic pressure and tight schedules that often leaves a very little time for them to get engaged in these mock drills. Then challenges in supporting children with special needs. Those children who are disabled or they're differently abled or they need special need, a special assistant, especially during emergencies, and basically they become a huge responsibility for the teachers, and it becomes difficult for them. How are they supposed to manage them? In your class, if you have 3 visually child students or if you have 2 physically challenged students, how are you supposed to help them in the emergency situation? Because as it is, it's very chaotic situations and we have to make sure that each and every student is safe. So which is the route that you have to suppose to evacuation plan for the differently abled people so that they don't they don't face any kind of problem, because the students will be rushing outside, they will be pushing one another, so it will be difficult for them to move around. Then fear and panic among students. So managing frightened students and maintaining discipline during disaster can be difficult for teachers. As it is, sometimes it is so difficult for teachers to maintain the discipline in a noisy class. If there's 60, 70 students and they're making so much noise, it's so difficult for them to control. So just imagine a class, if a disaster, God forbid, strikes, and the children are all panicked, they all are fearing the disaster. And for a small kid, if one starts to cry, all the students will start to cry. There's 60 students howling and screaming and crying. Just imagine how the teacher is supposed to handle all that. It is challenging for them. But she does have a very important role to play and very vital role to play during a disaster management. So we do find, so if you want to, so let's conclude. So teachers are at the heart of disaster preparedness and resilience. They play a very crucial role in educating, in guiding, and protecting students during emergencies. So through disaster education, through mock drills, and safety training, they foster awareness, preparedness, and confidence among younger learners. Now, despite the challenges, such as the challenges we saw, like limited resources, or the training opportunities, or the time constraint, or you can say, or well prepared teachers can reduce risk, save lives, and support recovery efforts. So, if we have to strengthen the teacher's capacity, because by strengthening the teacher capacities, it's therefore essential for building a safer schools and a more resilient communities. So with this, I have come to the end of this week, the last lecture of the week, in which we looked into the teacher's role. These are the different books and the different, you can say, websites. The web links are also being provided for you for more comprehensive reading on this particular topic. So thank you all for your patience listening. Till I meet you again in another week with another brand new topic of environmental education and sustainable development. Till then, take care of yourself and have a nice day. Happy learning. Bye bye.